Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Louisville here in Kentucky. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe. I am with Jacob Van Lunen in the booth, and we are underway. Brad Nelson on the left-hand side. You see him furiously writing down the contents of Alex Sittner, his opponent's hand, on the right-hand side. Now, I can see here that Brad Nelson he's playing a Thoughtseize on turn one, something that we've seen from multiple decks, but he's actually playing mono-black Devotion.
Yes.
And he's playing against Sittner, who looks like he is on Esper.
You know, Brad's deck is Mono Black Devotion. This deck, top 8 at the Pro Tour. But it also has had a sick run on Magic Online since then. The deck's pretty easy to put together on Magic Online. Not that many cards that you need to acquire besides things like Thoughtseize, which a lot of people already had from playing Modern. And here he's looking at Alex's hand. He's going to go ahead and take that Dissolve. Jace and Aetherling in there. That means Alex isn't going to really be interacting at all until turn 4.
Not a lot of stuff going on here for Alex. I'd expect him to be aggressively scrying away non-action spells in the early stages here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, Brad, I mean, he doesn't really have that much going for him either. Remember, the Mono Black deck doesn't really do that much until later on in the game.
Well, you say remember, but, what does this deck try to do?
This deck will chain a bunch of Gray Merchants together.
Oh.
It applies pressure with things like Desecration Demon, and it rips apart its opponent's hand with cards like Thoughtseize. I mean, it's just a really powerful deck. It's incredible at grinding out the other Devotion decks because you get to play so much spot removal.
Where you can just keep your opponent off of Devotion sort of indefinitely. All right, second Thoughtseize here for Brad Nelson, and he's going to see far and away land, Aetherling, Jace, Architect of Thoughts. So really still no great action here for Alex Sittner. I mean, he just has a hand that is incredibly slow here.
Yeah, now Brad's going to be in an interesting situation here. The Far Away interacts very well against the Desecration Demon that Brad has in his hand, but at the same time, letting your opponent resolve a Jace on 4 can be a pretty big issue. Oh, it looks like Brad has Mutavault, so that's going to at least force Alex to send that Jace upstairs when he plays it on turn 4, if he does. And it's looking like Alex might not even be able to play the Jace on 4 because Brad's just going to tap out and put a Desecration Demon on the battlefield. Boom,
there it is, 6/6 flying for Brad. Very solid creature. Packs a big punch for not a lot of mana and really puts a lot of pressure on your opponent to do something about it. And there it is.
So another Far Away off the top there for Alex.
Another Far and Away for Alex. It means that Brad Nelson's demon must be sacrificed. And I think that he just attacked with Mutavault.
Looks like it.
And shipped the turn back. Okay.
And Brad missing that 5th land drop. Pretty rough for him. I mean,
yeah. He does have a Gray Merchant in his hand, I saw.
He's got to be pretty frustrated that Alex was able to draw Far Away on the turn after he stripped Far Away out of his opponent's hand with Thoughtseize. Definitely not where he wants to be.
Pretty brutal, really.
Yeah, going to go ahead and Hero's Downfall that Jace.
And to be specific, we should say the other Far and Away.
Yes.
There's only 2 in the list. All right, let's see what Brad Nelson comes up with here.
And, I mean, we have to remember, Alex has a lot of dead removal spells in his deck. He has 3 Doomblades. So that Far Away was a very corner case card that he had to draw in that spot.
All right, but Brad's going to fire off an Underworld Connections. If that resolves,
and it's looking like it will.
Yeah. That thing can take over the game for Brad Nelson, potentially. He's going to activate it right away, draw a card, and just start grinding out advantage. Another Gray Merchant and pass the turn back. There's a Detention Sphere in hand for Alex Sittner. Does he just have to fire that off on that Underworld Connections right away here?
I think he does.
Yeah, there it is. All right, well, Brad made sure that he got his card back out of the exchange there, so he's ahead. And is that a Devour Flesh?
It looks like it.
Not bad against Aetherling. You can get him. If they get
now
greedy,
he has enough spot removal in his hand that he might actually be able to get an Aetherling.
Yeah.
But, you know, Alex can just wait until he has something like 9 lands in play and then cast Aetherling with 3 blue up.
Yeah, I mean, normally he can, but he is going to start taking damage in pretty big chunks here. He's already down to 14. You know, the Grey Merchant plus the Mutavault can start dealing damage in chunks of 4, and even if Alex comes up with something that can block or do well along those lines, Brad Nelson can also just play Grey Merchants over and over and kind of grind him out. So something to consider. I mean, right now, sitting at 14, you can't imagine that Alex is super worried, but he's got to think about it. All right, here he is. Attack, and Azorius Charm puts that back on top. Not the ideal target for an Azorius Charm, Jake.
Not really, and I mean, here Brad's probably a little bit frustrated with himself that he didn't go ahead and cast that Grey Merchant pre-combat, but his plan was to get an opportunity to resolve this whip. Once he gets the whip into play, he can really just force these Grey Merchants onto the board, you know? And
because if they get countered, he's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, not only that, but the Grey Merchant's value goes up significantly because the whip has 2 black mana symbols in its casting cost. So now he's going to have 4 devotion right when he recasts this Grey Merchant. He's going to drain Alex down to 10. He's going to jump back up to 21. Then the next Grey Merchant that comes down,
which he has in his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we go. He's going to be able to get this Aetherling as well.
Yeah. It looks like he's going to nab this Aetherling, which is going to be pretty nice for him.
So does it matter which sequence he runs out, the Devour Flesh and the Doomblade here?
Yeah, he's going to want to go with the Devour Flesh first because that's going to force Alex to use the Aetherling's Blink ability, and then once he does so, Brad can use a Doomblade and kill the Aetherling, and that'll make it so that his Devour Flesh will not gain Alex any life. So by sequencing it correctly, Brad was able to most effectively use his removal spells to keep his opponent's life total as small as possible while being efficient with his mana.
You know a card's really good, like Aetherling is, when you 2-for-1 yourself to get rid of it, and you're like, sweet.
Yeah.
Couldn't be happier about it. All right, and there it is, Grey Merchant of Asphodel. If you've played a bunch of Theros Limited like I have, you know that card well.
It's a pretty nice one. Just
and that's it.
There is.
Brad Nelson takes the first game. Grey Merchant has earned the nickname Gary Merchant of Asphodel, just because it's, you know, a couple letter changes away. Gary shows up and does his work.
You know, the thing about Brad's deck that's so awesome here against these control decks is mostly Whip of Erebos.
Okay, so how does that work?
So once you get the Whip of Erebos in play, even if Alex is able to start countering Brad's spells, able to start, you know, dealing with the threats that Brad is putting on the table, he's going to have to deal with them again, and the whip is going to just make them come back over and over and over again. And it just significantly reduces the value of all of the removal, all the wrath effects in his opponent's deck, but his opponent's going to have to keep all of those cards in.
Right.
Otherwise, his opponent can just get taken over by a Nykthos or something like that. So
nice synergies there.
In post-boarded games, Brad's going to get access to a lot more discard spells. He's going to get 3 Duresses off the board.
Wow.
A Pithing Needle to take care of Planeswalkers.
Or Aetherling.
Yes. And Erebos, God of the Dead.
Now, what is Erebos going to do in this matchup? Anything?
Well, yeah. See, the thing about Erebos in the control matchup is that Brad doesn't really care about his life total because Alex is going to try to kill him all at once. Like, Alex doesn't mind Brad gaining 10, 20, 30 life because in the end, Alex is going to have control of the game when he wins anyway.
Right.
It's going to be a very rare situation that Alex, and it can come up where Alex is able to get an Aetherling when Brad doesn't have much removal, and then he can just crack him for 8 twice, maybe, and get him out of nowhere. But in general, Brad can just pay 2 mana and draw a card repeatedly against a control strategy and just have way more resources than Alex could ever aspire to.
Now, we talked about this mono black deck and described it as a devotion deck.
Correct.
One of the things that we've seen pop up in the devotion decks time and time again is Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. Is this a Nykthos deck?
I mean, it plays a singleton copy of Nykthos.
So just one.
Yeah, I mean, multiple Nykthoses aren't
devoted.
really what you're going for here. I mean, your deck isn't a lot of permanence as opposed to the other devotion decks. Instead, your deck is a lot of cheap spot removal and then a lot of underworld connections. That's why it's pretty good against these other control strategies and pretty good against the other devotion decks.
Okay.
The green devotion deck is fine for you. I mean, it really is all about whether or not they have Garruk and whether or not you have more than one spot removal spell, or rather, whether or not you have Desecration Demon.
Okay.
I think the more Desecration Demons the black player has, the better the black player is positioned, but the more Garruks the green player has, the better the green player is positioned, and it can really just go either way.
One of the sweet things about this deck is kind of the yin and yang that it has as well. It can go Thoughtseize, take some damage, from Thoughtseize. Then you can play Underworld Connections, draw a couple of cards, take some more damage, and then it can even use a card like Erebos to draw some cards and take more damage, but then it can recoup that damage with Grey Merchant of Asphodel, and that's what you're drawing yourself into with those other cards.
Definitely, and the Grey Merchant's just, again, it's a snowball effect, as we've seen with these other devotion decks.
Yeah.
Once you get a Grey Merchant and it sticks on the battlefield, then each subsequent Grey Merchant gets significantly more powerful. And here we see he has two copies of Whip of Erebos in his main deck, and those recoup life very well also.
Okay.
Packrat. Packrat, a limited bomb, also quite strong and constructed. Very good with Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, especially if you have something like Underworld Connections going, because you can start drawing extra cards and then dumping all that extra mana into those rats.
Yes.
And it just gets out of hand very quickly.
Yeah, Packrat's interesting against control decks as well, because it basically forces them to have a Supreme Verdict at some point.
I actually think he's going to sideboard those out.
Oh, is that right?
He might keep one in. I see one in his opening hand.
Yeah,
so.
I think I saw one, so I think he's keeping those in there.
Yeah, he's definitely
you just turn to Packrat your opponent, and you really can just be like, look, I'm going to discard twice to it, and I'm going to just hit you with it, and you must do something. Not that, they have stuff that they can do, but you do force them to do something.
That's definitely true. I mean, the problem is that you're forcing them to Supreme Verdict, but their Supreme Verdict is getting full value.
It is. It will. Yep, that is true. All right, Brad Nelson's taking a mulligan here. Sittner looks like he's decided to keep. Right now, Brad Nelson is sitting at 6-0 with his mono black devotion deck. And Sittner's at 5-0-1. Not common to see draws at this stage of the tournament, but it does happen occasionally. And Esper Control is usually the deck guilty on one side or the other for a draw. Usually both sides, to be honest, but.
Brad Nelson, one of the strongest standard players in the world. He is, as far as standard Grand Prix go, he is, I believe, top-aided the last 3 North American standard Grand Prix.
It is. I don't know the exact, but it is something insane. I see a Thoughtseize and a Duress, by the way, in hand.
And last night I got the opportunity to have dinner with him, and he said that he is confident that he is going to win this Grand Prix. He said that to me, Brad.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that.
Well, Brad says that all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Blood Baron of Viscopa, a couple of lands, and eligible targets include, is that a Hero's Downfall, a Pithy Needle, and a Jace Architect of Thought?
Correct.
Okay. And Jace down. Oh, man. Feels so good to Duress and Thoughtseize away your control opponent's hand. It's so nice.
It is very nice.
Now, the one
I
thing
like that old Duress too. That nice
old
Saga Duress.
Yeah, the surprise-looking guy. Duress.
What is this?
What? Yeah. What? All right, I think we're going to see a Packrat here. All right, this is not Hong Kong. This is not sealed. We're playing standard here, and it's Packrat. I'm actually, for one, just kind of relieved and happy to see Packrat on the table in Constructed, because that thing just wrecked so many people during Limited, and I was always like, and it's not even good in Constructed, but now I can see that actually it is going to get a little play in Constructed, and I high-five you, Packrat. Good job. You made the cut, although you've just been Pithy Needle, so.
That's actually great for Brad, though. I mean, Brad has the whip in hand. Now that he has that Pithing Needle out of his opponent's hand, that Packrat has already done his job. That Packrat was, in essence, a Ravenous Rats.
There you go.
That forces his opponent to tap mana, which is great for him.
No blue mana open here for Alex Sittner, so there will be no countering this Underworld Connections with a null or something like that, so he actually gets to land it. And I got to say, Brad's looking to be in a pretty good position, at least in the early stages here. I mean,
definitely
landing an Underworld Connections is big game against a control deck, especially when your opponent untaps and doesn't immediately Detention Sphere it.
Now, interesting situation here for Brad. Brad can play this Mutafall in his hand, activate his Nykthos, use that mana.
Oh, he's got a Thoughtseize as well.
Yeah,
so
you probably want to lead with that then.
Yep, all right. And there is an Elspeth and the other 2 cards that we knew from before, Blood Baron of Vizkopa and Hero's Downfall. And Brad looks like he said, I'm going to take the card that has protection for my whole deck.
Yeah, I think that's probably the correct decision on his part.
Now, is the clock ticking, though, here for Brad? Like, how bad is it if Alex lands an Elspeth for Brad?
Pretty bad.
Okay. So,
yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting here because, I mean, Brad's going to be able to apply a little bit of pressure with this pack rat. He's got a whole nother turn before his opponent gets to untap. But here, I think he just wants to use the Nykthos and put the Night Veil Spectre into play that's in his hand. But he's going to go ahead and just pass the turn and get as much value as he can out of his Underworld connections.
Okay. So
I don't hate that play either.
Grind on the mind.
Yep.
He is just going to keep doing it, and sure enough, Alex Sittner plays his Scryland, ships turn back. Brad activates his Underworld connections and keeps the train moving.
Ooh,
he draws
there it is.
Erebos here.
Yeah. Now that Erebos
why
is
did you
pretty
say,
huge.
ooh, there it is?
Erebos.
Yeah, I saw what it was, but I'm just saying, what is it going to do here? What's going on?
Well, it's going to be a 5-power indestructible creature. It's going to apply constant pressure onto this Elspeth. It's going to also just going to allow Brad to 100% ensure that he will continue to draw a gas, and he can just dig as deep as he wants to find something like a Hero's Demise and deal with that Elspeth.
Hero's Downfall?
Hero's Downfall, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
So now Erebos won't be active quite yet, right?
Correct.
But soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, he can essentially make it active whenever he wants to, thanks to the Night Veil Spectre and Whip of Erebos that are in his hand.
Okay. And there it is. This also means that any future Sphinx's Revelations will only be card draw, which is usually the most important part of a Sphinx's Revelation, but the life gain certainly counts.
Oh, it's definitely relevant.
Right, here it is. Elspeth. Play it. Plus it. Make 3 soldiers. And we'll try to get some counters down there in the future match area. Dice just drives me nuts, Jake. Can't tell when they're tapped. All right, so let's see what.
This Red does have this Mutavault. He can send everything at the Elspeth if he wants to. I think that the pack rat, isn't really doing much besides getting that token off the table here.
Yeah,
and
it's
by
just
everything,
kind of
I mean
entertaining that pithy
Mutavault.
needle right now. So Brad's deciding if he wants to play a whip. He's trying to decide. I mean, he's got options. He's got 4 cards in hand. And remember, he also has an activation of Underworld connections available to him as well if he wants to try to peel a card here if he's looking for something specific.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to want to land this Night Veil Spectre so that he can start applying pressure onto this Elspeth.
Now, he doesn't have a Hero's Downfall in hand, though?
He does not have a Hero's Downfall in hand. He
Okay.
does have the ability to, dig for it with Erebos and Underworld connections, though, and after he plays the Night Veil Spectre, if he's able to untap with that Night Veil Spectre, then he'll be able to create arbitrarily large amounts of mana with his Nykthos.
Okay.
And he can dump all of that into drawing cards with Erebos, and he can find himself a nice, fresh...
This sounds like a sweet plan.
Yeah, he can find himself a nice, fresh Hero's Downfall. And the other
He does
play
have
that I
4
like
in the
here is
deck.
also is that he can play a Whip here, and that'll allow him to gain enough life by attacking with his Erebos that, yeah, so if he plays the Whip, then when he attacks with the Erebos, he's going to gain a ton of life.
Is that a Life Bane zombie?
Ooh, it is a Life Bane zombie. Okay.
So 2 Heroes Downfall there for Alex Sittner, I believe.
Correct. Now, Brad's probably a little bit frustrated that he didn't just go ahead and play this Whip. He's just going to go ahead and activate this Nykthos.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
5, 6, 7. Oh, so we can play his whole hand.
Is it 6?
Oh, it's 6. I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
I miscounted.
Oh, you were talking about this earlier, that playing Nykthos really does put a certain strain on your... You have to count constantly.
Yeah. Ooh, he finds the Hero's Downfall. It's a good one.
All right, you mentioned it earlier, Pack Rat. Sadly, just going to trade for a token here. And looks like lining up a chump block against Erebos here as well.
It's all right. Pack Rat already did some work. You know, he's.
Did Pack Rat actually trade for 2? Did he activate Mutavault and turn it into a rat?
Oh, he did. The Mutavault actually made the Pack Rat larger. That's actually a very interesting interaction there. I like that a lot.
I like that too.
Mutavault does have all creature types, so he does pump Pack Rat.
Yep. We've seen Mutavault get flying from slivers, get pumped by Pack Rat now. Yeah, Mutavault, really one of the best cards in the whole entire format.
Definitely.
All right, there's a Pithy Needle. Now that could change things a bit here as well, couldn't it, Jake?
Definitely could.
I mean, can he just now ignore Elspeth, play Pithy Needle on it, and just start going to work on Alex Sittner's life total here, or does he want to actually use his creatures to kill Elspeth here?
I think he has a few different options. I mean, I don't think he wants to use his creatures to kill Elspeth. He's probably just going to Hero's Downfall the Elspeth.
Okay.
But
save his Pithy Needle for something else?
He could also just... I kind of like needling it, too, because then if your opponent draws something to deal with the needle, then you can just respond by killing their Elspeth.
That seems pretty good. Yeah, he's got to be worried about what
then your
Jace...
opponent might put a lot of resources into that.
He's got to be worried about Jace's down the line, but again, if you've got 2 answers, it makes it easier.
Yeah. Okay, so here, again, 6 mana being made.
You can see how tough this deck is to play. You can a lot of finger tapping, counting going on the table here.
8 black mana in pool. Yeah, sorry, 5 plus 3 is 8. Simple math, guys. And now he can play any combination of things from his hand. I mean, he can play a Night Veil Spectre, a Hero's Downfall, and a Whip of Erebos all in the same turn if he wants to.
Well, there's stage 1, Whip of Erebos. Does it resolve? Aetherling and 2 Heroes Downfalls in hand, so that is going to hit. It's not doing a ton here.
Definitely not doing a ton.
I mean, it can get back a Pack Rat, which doesn't really do much. Gaining a bunch of life is nice, though. He's at 13. He's not really under any pressure from Alex Sittner at the moment. But like you mentioned earlier, it's going to enable his Erebos to just go off and become a card draw machine. And
that's the thing, is now he has enough devotion and enough lifelink that he can just, you know, he's attacking now for 10 damage, and that's going to jump him up to 23.
Yeah.
And then now when he activates a Nykthos, he's producing, what is it?
2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah. So he's creating 10 mana, gaining all this life.
And he has his other lands, too.
Yeah.
He'll have access to 13 or 14 mana, potentially more. And like you mentioned, he can just start using the Greed ability on Erebos to just draw himself a bunch of cards and just overwhelm his opponent, who, interestingly, should be the one who's drawing all the cards and overwhelming his opponent. All right, so Night Veil Spectre down. Night Veil Spectre down again. And Sittner had an Aetherling in hand last we saw, and that's going to do it.
Yeah.
Brad Nelson, 2-0 over Alex Sittner. That looked like easy work for Brad. I mean, he had to do some thinking, don't get me wrong, but like tearing your opponent's hand apart, presenting really tough to deal with threats, and outdrawing, you know, and I mean, like, I don't mean drawing better, but I mean just straight up out-carding your Esper control opponent. That's got to feel good if you're sitting in Brad Nelson's seat.
I mean, the mono-black Devotion deck does that better than any other deck. You're playing 4 copies of Underworld Connections in your main deck. Now, that's a card that a lot of people, you know, I played 2 of that in my main deck at the Pro Tour. It's a card that the Esper control decks, if you play it on turn 3, they have a real problem with that.
Yes.
If they're not tapping out for a Detention Sphere on their turn to deal with it right away, it just takes the game over by itself.
It does. And I think the key here is that there are some decks that can get ahead on cards against like an Esper control deck type thing, except for the cards that they're drawing don't interact favorably. So it's like, yeah, have all the bears you want or have all the whatevers. Like if we both draw a bunch of cards, Esper wins. That's not the case, though, with this mono black deck. It actually has tons of tools that are really good against that control deck.
It can just rip apart the control player's hand, and even when the control player really refills their hand with something like Sphinx's Revelation, it can just rip it right apart again.
All right, let's take a look at our other feature match here. I see a Todd Anderson on the right-hand side of your screen versus Sam Black on the left. Sam still piloting his mono blue deck that he just top-8'd Pro Tour Theros with, so he's incredibly familiar with this deck. He's not the original designer of it, interestingly. He's put many people in the top 8 of the Pro Tour with his designs, but he said he was actually working on a different deck when this one came up and switched over to it relatively late in the testing process. But he definitely loves the deck and has had incredible success with it. Looks like a Doomblade's going to attempt to hit a Frostburn Weird here. I see that there's a Bident of Thassa. The Judge's Familiar is freshly cast, perhaps even still on the stack.
I believe it's still on the stack here.
Mm-hmm. So
now Todd Anderson also playing Mono Black Devotion, playing the exact same list as Brad Nelson.
They're both
and
playing
Todd
the same
are,
deck? Okay.
Close friends, both down in Roanoke, Virginia, and this list has served them very well this week on Magic Online, and they're looking to translate that into some Grand Prix success here.
I gotta say, after seeing it, I kind of want to try it myself. It looks sweet.
Pretty fun.
A friend of mine back home in Seattle's playing it in a tournament today, and yeah, it's a popular deck.
Sweet.
All right, Doomblade resolves. Weird down. You know, it looks like Judge's Familiar resolves as well. Sam Black sitting with Island, something else that I couldn't quite see. He's got 4 cards in hand.
Now he's got some options here. He may want to activate these Mutavaults and get in to draw some extra cards with Bident of Thassa. Bident of Thassa is his very best card in this matchup. And that's what he's going to do. He's just going to take the 2 free cards, drop Todd down to 2, I believe.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to force Todd Anderson to think twice about trying to get value out of that Night Veil Spectre. Todd also has Underworld Connections on the battlefield. Can use that one more time, but that would make the Judge's Familiar lethal. So he's got tough decision there, depending on, you know, that decision really comes down to, I mean, going down to 1 is fine, which it looks like he's going to do here, you know, but it just depends on what you're trying to draw. If you've got something in mind, I see that he has a Gray Merchant in his hand, so that's going to help him bolster his life total right back up again. Though Sam Black has left up 2 mana, feels like Todd can still just run out the Merchant here, right?
Oh, I think so. I think you want to go to combat first.
And he does that. You see him point at his Desecration Demon. He's saying, I'm entering combat. There's a trigger on the stack that says, you may sacrifice a creature and tap my demon and put a +1/+1 counter on it. What do you think, Sam Black?
You know, what's interesting here is that now Todd's deck, when he's playing against a deck with that has something akin to Celestial Flare or Azorius Charm, he's going to want to cast those Gray Merchants pre-combat. But against a deck like Mono Blue that has more interactive instants that can be cast at any time, like Cyclonic Rift or Rapid Hybridization, then he's definitely going to be wanting to cast his spells post-combat because he wants to see what happens.
Okay.
And he wants to get full value out of his cards. He wants to actually get to attack with his creatures given the opportunity.
All right, so Sam Black is going to tamp down the Desecration Demon. Looks like he's done it quite a few times in a row here, and he's going to use one of his Mutavaults to do it. Night Veil Spectre is attacking. Now this should signal to Sam Black that Todd Anderson has some way to gain some life or to kill a bunch of creatures. So let's see. Here's the Rapid Hybridization. He's going to fire it off here, and that is going to take 3 Devotion away. And even though Gray Merchant's pretty sweet at 6, it would have been pretty nice at 9 as well.
Yes, it would have been very nice at 9 there.
Sam Black was aware of the situation at hand, though. Decided no cards, and I'm going to take 3 Devotion off with my Rapid Hybridization.
And it looks like if Todd is able to dig himself into another Gray Merchant here, he's got the game locked up. This is game 3 now. Yeah, Sam drawing another island now off of that Judge's Familiar tap. And
I mean, Sam has
hacking away as much as he can with that owl, but
did it get through?
It did get through.
Did he draw a card?
He did draw a card.
Yeah, I saw that he has a Thassa in his hand.
He also has a Master of
and
Waves.
And a Master
in
of
his hand.
Waves, yeah. Neither of which are blowouts here, but well, that's going to help.
They're definitely something, though.
Yeah. Todd Anderson's at 6 life here, and he's in danger.
He's certainly in danger
of
here.
Master of Waves taking over this the middle part of this game here and just running him over.
I mean, you have to remember, he does have access to... He's going to draw another 3 cards before he has to try to interact with this Master. He gets to activate the Underworld Connections. He draws for his turn, then he gets to activate Underworld Connections. And he's playing a deck that's a pile of removal spells when it's post-boarded against the blue deck.
Yeah.
So not only can he draw any of those removal spells, but he can also just draw a Grey Merchant.
Yep. So 5 tokens here for Sam Black, I believe.
Looks like it.
He's left up a Mutavault activation. He's going to get a couple of triggers on his Cloudfin Raptor. And he's looking to be in a pretty good position here if Todd Anderson cannot find what he needs. He draws a Swamp. He's got another Underworld Connections in his hand and one other card which I couldn't quite see. Hoop.
Another land. He's going to go ahead and tap this Connections again.
So he needs to find a Grey Merchant here?
Or a spot removal spell.
Or just something to kill
Fine.
Master of Waves?
Yeah.
If he doesn't, is it pretty likely that Sam Black is just going to move in, hit the old attack with all button, and try to finish off Todd here?
Well, I mean, he's not going to go to combat without activating those Underworld Connections again. He really, really needs to find that spot removal spell. I mean, he can even activate the other Underworld Connections in his hand and look for a 2-mana spot removal spell.
It's a Night Veil Spectre number 2, so Todd Anderson tied at 1 game apiece with 13th ranked player Sam Black. And Todd is in a desperate situation. He's going to kick things off with a Temple of Deceit here. That's
Should
not
have
a
used
spot
that Temple
removal.
of Deceit before using that Underworld Connections again.
Yes, and now, but you mentioned it. It looks like he's going to try
Oh, no,
to...
he drew the Temple of Deceit second, maybe?
Maybe, but he's going to try to probably have to fire off that Underworld Connections, the second one. And so, I mean, if that isn't a spot removal spell, then it just doesn't matter. All right, put it on this thing, activate this thing again. Can he find it? No, it's another Swamp, and that's it. He throws his cards on the table, and Sam Black is able to defeat Todd Anderson 2-1 here in round 7.